Hi everyone, welcome to our first workshop, Introduction to Web Development, HTML and CSS. My name is Julia and I learned web design in 8th grade using Wix to create two websites. One is like a pampering pups website, like a store where you can buy things. And this is like a Amazon Echo Dot website where I have like to promote the Echo Dot. And later on, I learned HTML and CSS to create other websites as well. So in web development, it's like you're designing, creating, and maintaining a website, and elements to watch out for are colors, placing of images and text, and the type of website. If it's static, you're mostly showing information to the users. You may be using HTML, CSS, etc. If you're having a more dynamic web page, it's more interactive, where the user might be putting in users' names and passwords, like connecting to like a database. Maybe you're storing or logging data in the backend. Maybe you're using PHP, Node.js, etc. You hear that term front-end development a lot in hackathons. So like, I'm a front-end developer. Basically, it's where you're creating or maintaining the part of the website that the user interacts with, like the client side. Maybe you're manipulating the text, images, links, etc. So for this, here's an example website that I made in winter break. This is like a biography webpage for Fei Li, who is a professor and researcher at Stanford in the field of AI, which is really cool. And here, as you can see, I have a footer, the main page, homepage, and also the navigation bar, which is like the basic design for most websites. As you can see here, that the design is mostly consistent, where I have the same color, the same font size, etc. You usually want to have that when you have your website. So this is mostly called UI UX design. You're manipulating elements the user interacts with or sees, like buttons, icons, and colors. So with color theory, it's where you want to have like the vibe or feeling of the site. So if you want to create like a warm, welcoming resource website, you might want to use warmer colors like pink, purple, red, etc. You usually want to have 3 colors or less, because if you have more than that, it seems very all over the place. And also you want to have neutral colors, like this background slide color, because you want to have the user pay attention to the images and the text and not like the background of the website. For simplicity, you want to have more space, or else the user is going to be overwhelmed with all this information. With flow, it's like, is it clear to navigate from page to page? So can you find the necessary information? Can you find the contacts page? Can you find the about page, the works page? You want to have good flow so that the user won't be like frantically finding where things are in your website. You also want to have balance. So you have everything centered or organized. Here, as you can see, I have like a good amount of space between images, and also have it more to the center to make it more like a balance, or it's going to think, the users are going to think this very like lopsided. A good quote is, while it makes sense to you, it can be a foreign language to another. It's basically, maybe when you see your website, it makes sense to you where everything is, but maybe someone else might have trouble finding where the login page is, for example. So in that case, you want to have someone else look at your website at all times to get a second opinion. Our focus for this workshop is mostly simple static front-end websites, like mostly using HTML and CSS. So HTML is kind of like this hypertext markup language, where you're basically looking at the text. You're putting the text on the website. Here you have this basic structure. You have like a head and a body. Inside the head, you have like title and links to CSS, JavaScript, etc. Inside the body, you have the navigation bar and the main content. So here's some examples. So in the head, you might have like meta char set, which is basically whatever you type, the browser can convert that into machine readable code. So like if you type in hello, the browser is going to understand what that means and display it on the browser. You can also link your CSS pages. Here I have in the bottom, I have style/feifeli.css. So here it's like I put it into the styles folders, which is why I have that style slash. If you put it in the same folder as your HTML page, the CSS page, then you don't need that style slash. And in the middle of that, I have link rel to the font awesome icons. I use that because they have like pre-made icons for social media. If you go here, I have this like LinkedIn and Twitter icons on here. Those are from Font Awesome. You can link that to make it look very professional. In the bottom, I have a navigation bar example where you can put it in UILIA tags, such as here. So HTML uses tags. They have like tags inside tags. Tags are basically where you have like those like sideways arrows. Those are basically called tags. So this is called an attribute. Basically, this attribute means that you're basically telling the website that this is a link, right? So it can be an attribute is like a special word to indicate like what it is. Maybe, or you could also have like traits of an element, like width of an image. Here it's a link, right? So if you see this, this is the one of the ways to create a link. So on your website, you're going to be seeing visit our site. You don't see this, but you do see this. And if you click on it, you can go to that web page. One example for that is if you go here, if you go to works, and then if you go to read her publications here, and then that's where you can link it to another page. So more tags are a div tag, which is basically like a container with information inside. You can have an image tag, a tag for links, etc. And this is like more titles or subtitles, and P is like for a paragraph. So here, paragraph might be this text right here. This could be the main tag or the main H1 tag. This could be the H2 tag. This is the topic, and this is the subtopic. Okay, so one thing to kind of keep in mind is like don't put text inside here. Like don't just like leave it out there. If you're going to be having text, put it inside one of these, and then put that inside here. The reason is because you want to have it so that it's easier to style it, right? So if you want to have like a different color for the H1 text and the P text, you want to put it inside here so that you could easily reference it in the CSS. Like, for example, H1, and then you have these curly braces, you say color red. It's easier to put that instead of just like putting it inside a div only, because then you can't have like specific styles. It's gonna be very hard to style it specifically the way that you want. CSS is basically called cascading style sheets. Basically, it's like the style of your website. You might be looking at margins, positions, colors, sizes. Behavior is like what changes on mouse hover. So basically, if I do this, it turns red. It means that you're going to be clicking on here, that's where you lead it to that page. But hovering is like something changes when you hover on it. Here's an example. So if you have this asterisk, basically you're putting the style to the entire website no matter what. So like the entire website is going to have a font color of blue, a background of red, for example. However, you can override that. So if you want only the footer to be black, then you can just do like dot footer background color black. You can just override the main tan background color. So you can override this, but this is basically setting the entire website to these styles. So here's some other common CSS attributes. Here's like different ways to specify the color. You can also have a background image. Here in the homepage, my main site or the homepage has like an image as the background, while everything else is like a solid color. Border radius is pretty interesting. It's basically where you can make something either rectangle or in between or circle. So here it's like if it's border radius 0, it's gonna have like a sharp rectangle, but if I make it border radius something else, it's gonna have this like rounded pattern. I think if you do border radius 50 pixels, it's gonna have this round circle, which is like pretty cool. So you can make it different shapes as well. Margin and padding. Okay, so like these two are mostly like easily mixed up. So basically margin is like the space between the element and the outside. So like maybe you want to have a space between this button and this footer. So this is like the margin. Padding is like the space inside. So like if you want to have space between this text and then the button right here, if you want to have space like right around here, that's called the padding. You want to have adequate padding, or else it's going to look very like weird if you have text all the way to the side of the button. Okay, so box shadow is pretty cool. So basically if you do box shadow, you can do like a 3D effect, which is pretty cool. Cursor pointer is like the cursor changes. If you see like right now my cursor is changing based on like where I'm hovering above. So like if I hover above this link right here, it becomes a pointer. So that's what it's specifying. Inline block is like everything is in the side, so everything is like lined up horizontally. Overflow hidden is like you don't want that scroll bars, right? So mostly you don't want to scroll bar your website, or else it's gonna seem very unprofessional and kind of weird. Okay, 3 ways to add CSS to your code. So usually you can just like put this to link it so that you can have 2 separate files. One HTML file, one CSS file. You can link it together. In CSS, you don't have to link it to HTML. Or you can just put it directly inside the HTML tag. So in HTML, if you want like the H1 to be red, you can just do this. This is like where you just like put every CSS code inside a style tag. So here, W3 Schools uses it pretty often in their try it out website things. So here they have like an HTML, and then they have a table. This is like the table's elements, or no, the table stuff. So like they have a style tag. Inside the style tag, they put table stuff inside. Maybe they want the border to be 1 pixel, which is like right here. So as you can see, you can just do that to put it all inside the HTML file. But I actually recommend just doing the first step, because then you can just like, it's easier to just navigate if you do 2 separate files. If you want to assign more specific elements, you can just do this. So if you have a H1 class, inside you have some text, maybe only part of the H1 class is, the H1 text is part of the class main. You only want that one part of H1 to be font weight 800, which is like a bold like this. Maybe you only want that to happen. That's what you can do. More selectors is, if you do this, you're making everything inside the P some other thing. Maybe the entire thing is going to be bolded or have an underline. This is like more specific. Like you only want that one specific class of P to have some kind of element. This is the same thing except for it's like ID. So if you have like the ID intro, you only want that intro to have some specific types of styles. This is pretty interesting. So this is like hover, right? So in hover, it's like you can change the behavior when you hover. Like I said earlier, you can have like turning red when you hover, turning dark red when you hover, or you can turn opaque when I hover here. So some difference is that if I do this, it's like automatic turns. Here's like slowly, like this. It's because I use like a transition. I use like transition and maybe like 0.2 seconds. It makes it seem more sleek if you do it that way. Because if you just do this, it's like very fast. Here's like very slow. So you can specify however you want. It's just gonna be like, I think it was like transition 0.2 seconds. I think that's what it was. You can just put this inside, put this part inside hover. So like inside this hover tag, you might be doing this. Except for it's like lowercase. So here's like float versus like display. So with float, you can like make it like go left or go right. So in my navigation bar, as you can see, it's mostly floating right because all the things are shifted to the right. You can do that. Display is like how you want to display. Inline block is like horizontal, block is like vertical, etc. Some differences between HTML and CSS structure. HTML, you have like all these tags inside tags. CSS is like blocks. You have block here, block there. HTML is like the same thing as like that asterisk. Everything is going to be background this color. Body is like that one part of the body. You only want the background to be like this, for example. You can have commas too. So like here, H1, H2. Maybe you want to have the same style for both of those. You can just do that too. So for our students, we have them kind of like start off with their own website. We're going to be improving it as the workshops go on, as we teach more important information. But here you can get started on either creating a biography, personal, or a hobby or cause. So people can use either brackets, Visual Studio Code, or REPL it. REPL it is kind of like more like an online thing where you can just like do your code and run it here. You can see it here. Online, it's like you don't have to like deploy it anywhere. You can just see it by clicking on this, and that's the name of your website link, which is pretty cool. Okay, so like I said before, it's easier to create 2 separate files, one for CSS and HTML. You don't have to like scroll like up and down to see CSS, for example. You can just have 2 separate files. For multi-navigation pages, you want to have like a navigation bar, separate HTML files. Okay, so here's the thing. You want to have one CSS page for all HTML files. It's because I made the mistake of having like several CSS files for all the HTML pages for each separate HTML page. The problem is if you're having like consistent design, like right here, if I have like consistent background colors, whatever, you have to like change it in all CSS pages, which is like really annoying. So if you want to have like, oh, I want to have the background all blue, then you have to go to every CSS page to change it to blue. It's not going to change it automatically. So it's easier to just, if you want to have like consistent design, to have one CSS page for all the separate HTML files. So for one website that we made for a hackathon, it looks like this. So for this one, we had only one, or okay, almost one CSS file for every element for every page. You can also change like the, if you want to have like different elements, however, for each section of each page, maybe you can do like .head, or maybe like .head2, so you can have separate elements. Again, it's easier to just have one CSS file. Here are some starter code. So here it's like starter code for the navigation bar, for the head. You can link your font awesome icons, link your style sheet. Later on, when we teach JavaScript, you guys can link your JavaScript page in HTML as well. Here's some starter code for just like the head part, CSS for the navigation bar. So you want to have this for your navigation bar, because if you don't have that, it's gonna have like dots. Like for example, if I do like this, it's gonna have that on the web page. I think the reason is because it's like a type of list, right? So if you want to list something on like a shopping list, you have like dot milk, dot egg. That's what they're doing. It's like a style of like a list, but you don't want that for navigation bar, or it's just gonna seem very kind of like very unprofessional. So you just want to have it none, so it's not shown. You don't want to have like a scroll bar in your navigation bar. That's gonna seem really weird. And then these are the other things that you can have as well. Here are my favorite resources. Like this is like a documentation page for elements of HTML and CSS. Here you can ask questions, or you can get see other people's answers as well. Here is like I said earlier, W3 Schools has like tutorials on pretty much everything. Geeks for Geeks, pretty similar, except for they have like more specific problems where they can help you solve something. They also have information as well. The other thing is that for our next workshops is going to be more in-depth. We're going to have like JavaScript, harder HTML, CSS, like creating a table, the difference between navigation bars too. So if you go to here, my navigation bar here is like it's gone if you scroll, but in here it's still going to be staying as you scroll. It depends on what kind of website you want to make. Sometimes you might want to have it, sometimes you might not. That's one difference. Yeah, I think that's it. You can find me at this email if you want any help with your website or anything, any questions that you might have. And here are our acknowledgements. And here's our social media links, website, Remind, Discord, etc. Again, thank you for attending our workshop, and we'll see you next time.